Hi, everybody. John Farian here with Live Large Universe. I hope you all have had an amazing weekend. We're here on December 1st, and I have with me Mr. Patrick McCoy from Colorado. How's it going, Patrick?
Going great. Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So, Patrick, you and I were just talking a few minutes ago. As people are coming in watching the show, I'm going to remind them, drop in the comments, let us know where you're watching from. Let us know if you've gotten your first snowmobile ride in or not yet. So, the first minute or so here, we're going to talk about that. So, Patrick, I understand you got your first ride in of the season here just within the last week or within the last couple of days, or what happened?
Yesterday. It was at yesterday. I went out at noon and did 28 miles
Nice.
and rode the road, uh, taking it safe. The snow looked good off the road, but I know it's not good enough. Saving my front ends for another time.
Yeah, yeah. So just remind everybody as you guys are coming in and watching, please go in the comments and just let us know where you're watching from. We're grateful that you're here. Please share the show out too. I'll give you a little more tips on sharing here in just a minute as well too. But as you're coming in, share the show out. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to know who's watching and where you're watching from. So Patrick, I got out for my first ride today. Finally, I was supposed to go out yesterday, but as I was on Friday night loading my sled, my wife's sled, a little error code popped up. It was lost communication with ECU. It looked like it's kind of like when you have a computer and they call it the blue screen of death. It's kind of what it felt like when I saw that. I'm like, uh-oh, that ain't good. And so I troubleshot it, did some software updates, finally broke down and brought it into the dealership, had them go connect it to the Skidoo Bud system, is the kind of the proprietary Skidoo software that they go in, they plug it in, they cleared codes, they did some more software updates, and all was good. And so we got it cleared out yesterday, got it set up, and my wife and I got up for our first ride today. Wasn't too bad. It was no grooming yet, and snow was not low enough to go into the full snow parks, but we did get out for our first ride, and found fresh tracks for a while. Did a lot of forest road riding and found some roads that nobody had been on yet. So it was a good time. Cleared a couple of trees off the trails, make sure they're ready for the rest of the season too. Did our part, but yeah, awesome. As people are watching, please come in and let us know where you're watching from. Share the show out. Appreciate you being here. A couple of quick things, some business, if you will. First thing is I want to talk to everybody about if you share the show out tonight, please do so, and you'll be entered in to win this first aid kit from it's a backcountry first aid kit from Mountain Lab. And so Mountain Lab is an amazing sponsor, and appreciate them being in there. And if you share the show out, you'll be eligible to win a chance to get this first aid kit. So Patrick, do you have any Mountain Lab gear? I've got a whole bunch of it. Do you have any of it yet? If not, you really should.
I do not.
Man, I tell you what, like when we were clearing those trees out today, I've got two saws. We've got one that's just like a fold out saw that's got maybe like an 8-inch blade on it. Works handy for the smaller stuff, limbing and stuff. But the other thing we had was there's like a chainsaw. Like it's just a chainsaw blade with two handles, one on each end. And my wife and I cut some, I bet one tree was a 12-inch tree. It took us a while to get through it, but just by having those with, they pack real light and small. Again, Mountain Lab equipment, like it's all the things that you ever should have in your tunnel bag. They've got like little portable headlamps. They've got little saws. They've got tow straps for sleds. If you're a skidoo rider, you got this tow strap to pull all your Polaris buddies out. Is that how that works for you? No. Oh, wait a minute. You ride Polaris, don't you?
I actually ride both. It
Do
just
you?
depends.
Depends on the day. Depends on the day. So awesome, awesome. So again, everybody who's watching, please go in, share it in the share out the show. Go in the comments. Let us know where you're watching from. And one more, really, really, really. And Patrick, if you haven't done this, immediately after the show tonight, you need to go do this. We're going to talk about Avalanche Alliance. And so in the show notes, you're going to see a description. And we are literally in the final week of Avalanche Alliance Sweepstakes. You can see I just did a screenshot of this tonight. We've got the Arctic Cat Snowmobile available. We've got the Marlon Sled Deck available. We've got an entire climb outfit available and a full BCA backcountry kit available as well too. So all kinds of amazing prizes. I don't know. I didn't even add it up this year. Let me guess quick here. Probably $30,000+ worth of prizes that we have available this year again. And right now, I am announcing for the very first time in this final week a new promo code. And this promo code is legitimately the biggest promo code we have ever launched in the history of Avalanche Alliance. And so, chance to win Arctic Cat Snowmobile, Marlon Sled Deck, Klim Gear, BCA gear, 50%, Patrick, I was telling you, 50% more entries for your money. Go into the link that's in the bottom of the show notes here. Everybody who's watching, get in there tonight and do that. You got less, I think, 7 days left. So on December 8th, this thing closes out, and then we'll give it away a week or so after that, right? And so we'll do that on the Snow West Magazine's Facebook page again, I believe, is where we're doing the giveaway. But this is a year we really need everybody's help. It's really the sweepstakes has been behind this year compared to other years. And, it's just kind of this slow economy, this bad economy. We're up to 47.5 as of tonight. Like, I just looked this up. And normally by now we would already be over $100,000, and we'd be pushing 150, almost $180,000 within the next week here. Guys, we need to get this and push this up over $100,000. So share this out, share the message out, share the link out with your friends and yourself. 50% more tickets for the sweepstakes. And all the money that we raise for that, Patrick, do you know where the money goes? If you don't, I'd be happy to tell you. Do you know where the money goes?
I don't know.
Well, the money goes for this Avalanche Alliance Sweepstakes. All the money raised goes right back to the snowmobile community, the motorized community, right? And so it's Avalanche scholarships. So through ARI, so people like yourself, Patrick, myself, we can apply for a scholarship against this, and we can get in, whether it's a pro level education that we're seeking or even a recreational level, as long as we are all like trying to make a difference in the community through clubs and inspiring others to get education and all those things. There's an application, you just submit, the information that's in there, and you can be eligible to pay for a lot. A lot of people get 50% of their Avalanche class paid for just by applying for that. So it's a great program. The other part of the money goes to all of the Avalanche centers across the U.S. So all of the 22 U.S. Avalanche centers have the ability to apply for grants for motorized programs for their Avalanche centers across the U.S. And each year, again, we've raised 150, 180 grand. Usually we net out minimum of 100 grand that we're giving away between those scholarships and those grants. And we're really making a huge difference in the industry right now with that. So really appreciate everybody's support with that. I appreciate it very much. So. Wow, lots of cool stuff going on. So, Patrick, about a week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, I put a post out saying, like, hey, I'm looking for new guests. I've got openings coming up for this season. And you were one of the first people that reached out to me, and we scheduled some time to chat. And boy, did we chat. We had some stories to go through, and we're going to go into some deep dive on those tonight. But for the sake of everybody here who maybe doesn't know you yet, if they don't follow you on Facebook, they can look you up. But tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background, and let's just hear something about who the heck are you?
Yeah, who the heck? Yeah, that's a good question. I think about that every day when I look in the mirror. No, I'm just I'd categorize myself as an adventurist and a dreamer. Always been chasing the things that made me feel like it was right, whether it was playing baseball, seeking my degrees in early childhood education and elementary ed, which I taught for a while in my life. It seemed like there was always something new that I kept chasing, and to bring the snowmobiling aspect into the story, from kindergarten to 8th grade, my bus stop was an Arctic Cat dealership that was teamed up with Harley Davidson, and I lived on a one-street neighborhood that had several families in the neighborhood that all had snowmobiles. And one family, they had brand new snowmobiles. One of my best friends, his father owned a boat store, so they had Johnson snowmobiles. Down the street, another friend, they were farmers and they had John Deere snowmobile. And as my family moved in and that bus stop became part of my life, my dad ended up buying my sisters and I a snowmobile to be able to hang with all the kids of the neighborhood that were all riding during the winter, when back in the late 70s and 80s, showing my age here, there was quite a bit of snow in the wintertime. But something that could never be taken away from me was those rides that I used to go on with so many different people in my life back in the little town of Rock Falls. And so many of my friends back then, their parents ended up buying them snowmobiles, and we
Nice.
were what I would call Huckleberry Finn, Tom Sawyer style of kids that were getting the freedoms of parents saying, go play, get outside.
Yeah.
And at the time, they were buying us as much gas as we'd need, and we would take off on these snowmobiles out in, whether it was the Hennepin Canal, whether it was chisel plowed cornfields, We were riding everything and as far away from our parents as you could imagine, having the most fun. And
Nice.
with those times, again, going back to that bus stop, I was dreaming. I was looking in the windows in the morning while I was waiting, seeing brand new Harley Davidsons, brand new snowmobiles of the time, and then getting the culture. You had this cultural thing going on with Harley men and women, and then the Arctic Cat men and women. And I was getting to bring the brand new snowmobiles from the back room in the morning, and they were letting me drive them to Highway 30 and park them. And so there was a lot of stuff that just kept getting added to me dreaming of having something that at the time my parents couldn't afford. These were
Yeah.
way, I was blessed enough for them to move me in that neighborhood and have a house. So that's where it started, the dream of snowmobiling. And something with that which is very important to me and holds them dear to me and how I still have this thing.
I love it.
Some back then at the Little Red Schoolhouse at Centennial Park, they had a course you could take, and that course was the Illinois Snowmobile Safety Course.
Nice.
And I have my card. This is probably from 1981, 82. And that, again, I'm still finding the answers to this second, me and you sitting here getting ready to talk about safety events that happened to me in the backcountry. Um, Again, coming from the Midwest
Yeah.
trail and riding the way we did, and then moving here, having safety as part of my quest. And I feel it's come into big play with me and the teams of people that I ride with today. But it also came into play when I moved out there, and there was a time where I was trying to find people to ride with because this backcountry thing was new. The mountain was scary, and you'd go up to people that looked the part, and when you'd go up and ask, I oftentimes would be told no, and that was because I didn't have the proper gear. And
Yeah.
again, going safety and what you need to be the best you can be for not only yourself but for the others around you
Yeah.
is something that I instantly, after being told no, I took what I thought was those guys are arrogant and they weren't very nice.
Yeah.
But time went on where I realized, oh gosh, how important was that no, where everything has come to where I'm writing with the technicality of
Yeah.
today. So that was a big important part of going from the dream as a little kid, having all that kind of build up to a point where I literally, as an adult, left Midwest and came to the West and
That's a
started.
cool part of your story too. I love it that you actually at some point you were like, I need to make sure that I'm backcountry snowmobiling because you had your first experience. Was it when you were still living in the Midwest, or did you just decide I'm moving out to Colorado and I'm going to ride mountains, or did you get a taste of it first? Tell us about that first taste of mountain riding and how that transformed your life to push you to move to Colorado, or what that looked like.
Sure. It was all about the getting back into snowmobiling. There was a
Yeah.
small part college, getting a job, moving forward with life where I wasn't snowmobiling. It was gone from me for 20 years.
Nice.
Easy. And I bought an old phaser. It lasted about 100 miles under my thumb. It just couldn't go. I wanted more, blew it up. And I went and bought a new Yamaha, and they came out with the Nitro.
Okay.
And at this Yamaha shop said, you need to go out to a place called Albany Lodge out in Wyoming. It's Albany, Wyoming. You should go check that out. So that struck something inside me that 6 months later, I had a vacation plan, went out there on a Nitro Yamaha and saw people doing things and going places. When I finally got up to an area where people were doing climbs and playing on different hills that we know in the Snowy Mountain Range, that people will ride. And I couldn't get a quarter of the way up in the deep snow. And when I would get stuck on that heavy Yamaha, the frustrations that I had were beyond my mind because I didn't know how they were doing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, technology that was way different than mine, but there was a ability, there was
Yeah.
writing. I'm not kidding you. I left and I went straight home, sold that sled, bought a 2010 Arctic Cat HCR, which was a hill climber
Yeah.
race, called it, which had a very hard lug, wasn't really meant for wafting deep powder. However, that's how I learned. I
Yeah.
learned how to do all my backcountry riding on a really wide front end and that sled, and I learned fairly quickly. Um, and so that was my first taste, was going out there a second time with the sled that actually could get me places and do more for me. And then that was when I left to go home and said, I got to move. There's
That's
no
awesome.
here and doing this once a year. I
Yeah.
need to do this for life. And that's kind of my sure sled life. Me and my daughter bought these at the Colorado Snow Show because
Very cool.
that's family. It's in my family. All my family rides, and we ride
Yep.
together, family outings. And
Nice.
so, yeah, that's what brought me here. I had to have the taste, but I had to learn the technique because I wanted to know more and how the guys I was watching were doing what they were doing, and that's has brought me through some of these
Yeah.
emergencies and have brought me to where my ability is today.
Yeah, that's good. So let's take a quick pause here and just do a couple shout outs to the folks who are watching here. I've got a bunch of names listed. So we've got Snowmobile Wisconsin is here watching, obviously from Wisconsin. Sodi Clay is here from Northern California. We've got Travis Balagier. Travis, I never know how to say your last name, but I know he's a good buddy of mine up in Alberta, Canada. So we got some Canadians watching tonight. We've got Chris here from Fort Collins, Colorado. Ufer, maybe a friend of yours, somebody you know possibly.
Sure. Hey, Chris.
Yep, awesome. We've got Wesley Army here from Richland, Washington. Chad Guthrie is here from Idaho. Who else we got? Rick is here from Washington, and we've got Backcountry Recoveries from Idaho is here watching tonight, and we've got Mike from British Columbia and Milo from Minnesota. So everybody who's watching, thank you for watching. If there's anybody who I haven't called out yet, just go in the comments and let us know where you're watching from. I'd love to know who's here, who's watching. For everybody who is watching, please take a moment just to share this out to your personal page. Let's see if we can get some more people to follow along, because I think we're going to have some pretty entertaining and exciting stories and educational stories that we can learn from. The first one I want to go a little deeper on. You've already touched on it, Patrick, but let's talk a little bit more about that day. Like, take me back to the day that you were going to go up to the snow park and you were trying to hook up with some riders in the snow park, and you got that first kind of cold shoulder of like, talk, like, what did the guys ask you? Like, you basically said that they told you, no, you can't ride with us, but let's go into it a little deeper, because I think it was a really important moment that I'd love to elaborate on a little bit. So take us back to that day, kind of where your head was at, what your plan was for the day, who you approached, and what kind of questions they asked you. I think it's a great learning moment.
Sure. Well, I'm openly bold, so moving out here, I knew I was on my own. So going up to Albany parking lot or going up to Green Rock parking lot, which are the two main lots that I'd go to, I would seek out riders. And
Yeah.
this particular time that we're speaking of, going up to a group of guys, I just happened to pick a kid, that by the name of Calvin Felker, who's part of the Felker clan,
Okay.
which is something of importance here when you start talking about and aero chargers and the OEM Ski-Doo. Lynn Felker was a pretty big part of
Nice.
making that come together, what I would call a super tuner in the industry.
Nice.
And so when told no, there became the questions, because I'm sure I was a deer in headlights. I felt like it.
Yeah.
Felt, again, going back to the arrogancy, I didn't know they were trying to save my life or educate me with not so many words by just using the word no. But the questions were, do you have a probe? Do you have a shovel? Do you have a transponder? Do you wear a blow bag? And, the blow bag, the avalanche bag, it seemed like that's the one thing that people would allow you to still ride with them if you didn't have that. The key is the probe, shovel, and the transponder. Now, at the time of being told no, I'd never been through avalanche training, never been through any, scenarios
Yeah.
that, using those parts, learning how to rip them from your body, from the backside, and getting everything in motion for that 15 minutes of, dear life-saving opportunity that you might have for the person buried in the
Yeah.
avalanche. It's all about training. It's all about the triggers. I mean, those things are so important. But again, being told no, I didn't know why. Like, why
Yeah.
do I need a, what or I don't even know what a transponder is at that point when they're saying these things. So literally, I walked away from all that literally steaming of the arrogance. I mean, at that moment, I had no idea what
Yeah.
happened. It took many no's later, and also being in the scene, hearing more about issues out in the backcountry, whether it's loss of life
Yeah.
or people dealing with what they're dealing with. And after getting more knowledge of what those parts and pieces are necessary for, and then having been told no a few more times after that, having this come across to you when someone says, do you have this, do you have this, do you have this, and having done that to people myself, and they say, oh, that costs too much, I can't, I'm not going to buy that, it's too expensive. I've had the people say, well, how expensive is your life, how
Yeah.
much is your life worth? So people start adding that into the conversation, that your life is more important, so pay for these things.
Yeah.
Life is more important, so you can help me if I'm
Yeah.
buried. And so the practicality of all those parts and pieces started to make sense. And then as soon as I bought them all, I've never had a problem riding with anybody. However, just buying the gear and having the proper gear,
Yeah.
even that, getting that knowledge isn't enough. It's about practicing using those things,
Yep.
learning to rip those from your backpack and getting yourself into a working position. And when you're with a group, you've already had a pre-morning talk about avalanche
Yep.
danger, how we're going to ride today, where we're going to ride today, getting everybody on the same page. Because again, we're all acting together under the circumstance of, if someone triggered an avalanche and now you're having to deal with such a scenario where everyone has to come to the same page. And again, you might have stragglers, but there's got to be the leader. There's got to be the person that takes
Yeah.
charge of the situation and gets everybody focused, because there are so many tiny details that can trigger your transponder to not be leading towards the right place it needs to lead you to. So
Well,
again, take all this stuff to heart. It's very important to
yeah.
go from parts and pieces to actually knowing how to use them.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing that's so critical is just, to have the gear, of course, but then to get the training, like to go through like avalanche awareness classes and then companion rescue classes, level 1 trainings. Getting that training for folks is really going to help them understand like how to use the equipment, what it's for, how it gets used, and then even more important is like how to avoid avalanches, right? Like just the idea of like going out in the backcountry and riding safely and navigating the backcountry. That's part of those avalanche trainings that people don't even think about, right? They think, oh, it's only about rescue, right? And it's using the gear and all that, but really it's about learning how to read an avalanche forecast, learning how to identify terrain, and like looking at the terrain and seeing like, okay, is there a cornice at the top of that ridge? Is there big pillowy snow? Is there wind loading? What's the avalanche danger today? Is it based on wind slabs? Is it based on storm slabs? Is it based on like persistent weak layers? All of those things mean something, and it allows you then to be educated to the point where you can make better decisions about go, no go for certain parts of the mountains. So it's such a crucial part of it. And I think I've been a big advocate for all of us, you and I, both Patrick, as well as everybody here who's watching, which, by the way, we got Kevin Hedstrom is also watching here from Dillon, Montana. Got Billy Siebert here, who's here, I believe he's from Wyoming, if I remember right. And then we got Brian Brumwell here from Liberty Lake, Washington. So, everybody here, the most powerful people that can influence safety in the backcountry is all of us through peer pressure, right? And I think you were on the what felt like a very negative side of it, Bill, Patrick, but the reality is like by someone holding you accountable, by basically giving you that peer pressure of like, no, you're not okay to ride with us, so we're going into some pretty serious backcountry, and I've got to know that you're part of the team and that you can rescue me if something goes down. And if you don't even have the gear, there's no way you can do that, right? And then if you even have the gear, do you know how to use it? If not, let's talk about that right now, right? And let's go through all that, right? So as far as out on the mountain. And so peer pressure is actually a really powerful tool, and I think that's why that story is so important that you share that. So thanks so much. Also got Ian here from Canada, as well as Todd from Minnesota. Thank you all for joining and watching. Please share the show out tonight, and don't forget, Avalanche Alliance, only 1 week to go. This is the last week. A week from tonight is going to be the final end of the sweepstakes. There's a link down below for final chance, or as last chance is the promo code. 50% more entries. So now is the time to get in on that. So Patrick, guess what? We're going to go into talking about satellite communication devices now. And here's the funny thing, everybody who's watching, is Patrick had so many amazing stories. I literally took a whole I think one and a half pages of notes, and I told Patrick, I go like, Patrick, you've got a lot of amazing stories, but we can't cover them all. We'd be on the show for like 3 hours straight, right? And so we narrowed it down to a couple of them that I thought were pretty impactful and were kind of related. And a lot of us travel with satellite messengers. So I personally use inReach devices. I've had Spot devices in the past. Patrick here is using Spot devices. He's got his device too. The newer ones, of course, you can text on too, just like the inReaches. But let's go through that a little bit. Patrick, the first time you ever had to use I think it was your old Spot before it was the ability to text message, right? So talk us through the idea of like, what made you decide to buy that device in the first place? And then very quickly, let's fast forward to the first time you had to, push the SOS button and what the situation was. It was with another group, right, that you came across.
Yeah. Buying it, again, everything we just spoke about kind of trended to all the parts and pieces that I'd started buying and bringing into my personal pack. And one of them was this early Spot device that was just a little round gadget, a few buttons. You could get online and do a lot of messaging and create some neat stuff with it, but it didn't have any verbal and or text messaging communication. So whatever you would program in it was what your messages were that you could send out, or you can press SOS. And for me, having that was the last thing. I had every other part that I felt was keeping me safe and everyone around me, but no one had anything to link us to a real SOS extraction, if you will, if someone would get hurt. And I finally went out and bought it and went through the process of figuring it out. And one of the beautiful things about this is that for $29.99 you get a $100,000 insurance policy through Geo Alliance. So that was a no-brainer. Once I figured out, okay, you have something you can press SOS for, and now you also have an insurance policy on yourself, because it's no joke if a helicopter comes and takes you out of the mountain. Yeah. You're going to have a ticket, at the end of that. So insurance is very important, and I'm sure most systems that are hooked up to Geo Alliance or whatever satellite communication system, I'm sure there's probably an insurance policy that you could possibly get. I just know of Geo Alliances that comes with Spot, and I use the Spot X. This is a newer version that allows you to text message. Now, going back to the situation, it's a spring ride. I'm with the first guy that became my friend and snowmobile buddy, and we're in t-shirts. We're hanging out way up on top of a mountaintop, just sitting there enjoying the sunny day. And again, going back to our conversation about safety, first thing that happens is we're sitting up there 20 minutes and sunbathing and enjoying, because there's not a lot of riding to do. It's just more joy, visual, getting to certain places and doing what you can with the snow that's there and left. But two snowmobiles come by that we were so far up, they looked very little, for the eye. But it was a visual I'll never forget, because I made a comment inside my heart when I saw them, and it was, at the time, two snowmobilers with no helmets on.
Yeah.
And it shocked me, because, again, I'm going through all those no's and learning the reality of how people feel riding backcountry, and I see two people with no helmets, and I make my daughters put on helmets for just walking on the sidewalk almost. It's just... When I saw that, I was just, I made some comments in my heart going, that's not very smart.
Yeah.
But 20 minutes later, we're still sitting there, and one snowmobile came back on that trail, and it was the bigger of the two people. So you could tell it was an adult and a child.
Yeah.
My friend that I was with, he immediately said, something's wrong. I'm going down there. I said, okay, call me if you need me. As soon as he got down to that person, they were gone. They split. And I knew something's up. I got myself together and I followed. It took me 7 minutes to get to wherever they were. And where they were, for anyone who's out there that might be from the Snowy Mountain Range, they were at the Saratoga side turnoff to go to the Quealy Hut. So off when you make that right to go onto the trail to go to the Quealy Hut, you got that huge open field to the left.
Gotcha.
And the two party took off across the field, the story goes, and the younger, it would be the daughter of the dad, because it's now it's coming to the fourth where it's a dad and a daughter. She races across that field where there was melt off. Again, it's a spring ride where all that white glass came to a point where there was a 20-foot ravine, and she went across it and hit the wall and broke her femur across her handlebars. And so when I drove up on it, I drove up on a dad down with his daughter on the far side where she hit, on the bank. And, she doing everything he could to keep her from going into shock and all these different things. Now, speed this up to my spot device. So I get there. God bless that I have this.
Yeah.
But here I am pressing SOS and say to myself, I hope this works.
Yeah.
Set it on my seat of my snowmobile. Go over and do what you can.
Yeah.
And be there and try to keep myself, because I'm not great with trauma. And there was a point where I was turning white as a ghost, and I can remember my friend goes, "Go over there and sit on your snowmobile," because I was getting woozy, and because she was slowly meandering to shock.
Yeah. Was it a compound fracture or was it all internal?
It was internal, but it was complete.
Yeah.
It was.
But it wasn't it didn't break through the skin though, did it?
Correct.
Yeah.
And of this scenario was, we were on the longitude and latitude line of Saratoga and Laramie, so it broke out both sides.
Okay.
So I brought the Army. I brought the entire cavalry. They were coming from everywhere. But it took probably, mind you, from SOS, it took probably an hour before the first.
That's fast. Yeah, that's legit fast, because most of the time if somebody needs help and you hit an SOS button or whatever, by the time search and rescue gets implemented, by the time a helicopter, it can be 2 to 3 hours. Like an hour is actually really fast turnaround for hitting an SOS button. And so that's the thing, and why we do avalanche training, why we do first aid training, first responder type stuff. You just don't know and we're in such extreme conditions that, if you were in a car accident, you broke your femur, like within 10 minutes or less, you're likely going to have emergency people on the scene caring for you. An ambulance will be there in probably 10 to 15 minutes. You're on the way. You're being helped by emergency professionals within minutes, right? When you're out in the backcountry, a 1 hour response time is about as fast as I've ever heard, right? And so that's a blessing, but just know that it compounds it when you're out in the backcountry, and that's why it's so important that the people you ride with are riding smart and safe, and know how to handle things if things do go wrong. So continue on with the story. So
to make it kind of aggressively bad was, this was the Laramie side that made it to us first. Saratoga came. When they got there, mind you, spring riding, all grooming was over. The whoop-de-doos were off the crazy chart. There was no putting her in a sleigh and bouncing her back to an ambulance. So that was what we found out later, that her shock that she was going into, who knows what that kind of unstable ride back would have been. But what was nice is when these guys came in, they said that there was a chopper working his way here, but the winds were getting to where it was almost 50-50 whether we would see one or not. And just getting that knowledge from the first responder was kind of, okay, wow. And then there was a moment, and I'm not kidding you, for all those as old as me, my grandparents used to watch MASH 4077. And I'm not kidding you, that same helicopter sound all of a sudden hit my ears, where it was thumps that was so far away, but I heard it, and I'll never forget it. It was like the overwhelming feeling of knowing that dad is going to have his daughter rescued from a helicopter. And that chopper pilot brought that thing down in there, landed it. And I videoed the entire thing. I have all of this on video as it happened. And 4 people come out of this helicopter ambulance, came and rescued that girl, put her in that helicopter. And I'm not kidding you. I was talking to the chopper pilot for a good 20 minutes, who I've sent the video to there back then. And he's like, I'm very nervous. He's like, to get out of this hole based on the winds, you know, and he was explaining it to me, and I never in my life seen anything like this. He hovered that chopper about 5 feet above the snow, and he went and he took that chopper as far to the farthest corner of this circular lower pit, and he drag raced this thing. He pointed that nose straight towards the ground like this, and he did extra move straight across that thing as fast as he could get it, and shot that thing straight up in the air. And I'll never forget screaming with my arms up, saying literally, "Spot, it worked."
Yeah, that's
because
awesome.
what did I say at the beginning of the story? I hit SOS, and I didn't know if it was going to work. This was a device that had zero communication. You know, it didn't have verbal or texting, so I had no clue the whole time what was going on. And going back to what I stated, I did all the fancy little gadgeting inside of it. And when I pressed SOS, every family member that I had across America that was hooked to it got hit up, called by the sheriff, state police. I mean, it scared everybody. I had people thinking it was me.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is it's your device. It's tied to you. So when you hit the button, that's the first thing they're going to think of, is that, oh my gosh, you know, Patrick's been in an accident. I hope he's okay. Let's get somebody out there. Which the reality is it's an emergency, regardless of whether it's you or somebody in your group, but you're involved in something that needs to happen there. So that's the amazing thing, is that the equipment does work, and it's life-saving equipment, and so it's so important to have. And so it's an amazing story that you were able to really help that young girl out, and you know, probably saved her life, because as we all know, a femur can be a life and death, you know, injury, depending on if it hits an artery in your leg or something like that, right? And like, just moving somebody down a bumpy trail on a mountain could sever an artery in her leg with a broken femur, right? So
100%.
Yeah.
And from that, the first thing I did was quested to find something with better communication. And I ended up moving to the Spot phone.
Yeah.
And that was what I say was 85% there. And then they finally came out with the Spot X.
Yeah.
And this had all the wonderfulness of texting. So no matter what happens at this point, I can make sure loved ones know I'm okay, or it's me, or someone can be working with emergency people, you know, preparing them, even giving them understanding what they're coming into, because again, that particular scenario doesn't give anyone any information other than your longitude, your latitude, and they'll get you rescued. But better communication was necessary. That's what I learned from that. And again, you know, now that I'm a dad, you know, I also learned that safety has to be thought of instantly, because I know that father probably had a rearranging of his mind. And, you know, I've had contact with that girl a couple times where I will be making comments on Facebook, and she'll chime in and, you know, thank me. And, you know, again, cool. I felt God placed me in the right place at the right time with the right mechanisms to do what it is that I was supposed to do. And those are the continuations of, you know, who I am, which will continue on to the next story. And even I have another story from my first ride last night that I'll get that you're not even going to believe. Again, I feel like God puts me in the right place.
That's awesome.
For people who need me.
Yeah, let's do a couple of shout outs here of who's watching too. So we've got Terry Chisholm is here, I believe from Canada. We've got Andy Kennedy here from Washington. Cody Smith is here from Wyoming. We've got Rick Scherzel here, who's from Wisconsin. Daniel Leonard, who is from Spokane, Washington. Adam Baines, who's from Vermont but currently lives in Washington. Somebody who just joined our Snowmobile Club recently. And that's everybody that's there. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for sharing. Don't forget, Avalanche Alliance Sweepstakes, 1 week to go. Get in there. Last chance is the promo code for 50% more tickets. Let's do a big push this last week, and let's double this. Like, let's get that thing over $100,000. So it'd be amazing. So All right, Patrick. So tell me this next story. You also had a spot device. If I remember right in our story, you were still using the older spot device that didn't have text messaging but just had pre-recorded messages you could send out, right? So you were still using that old device, but it came into need again. So
Yeah.
discuss a little bit about, how many years later was that scenario from the first one, or whatever, and then it was your group that was trying to get through the backcountry and things didn't go exactly as planned. So let's talk about that day a little bit.
All right. Well, we're early in our technique of learning. So I'm with a group of four that they're all contractors of mine. I was a salesman in building supplies, so we're out for a contractor day, having a great time. Um, and with the day, we ended up towards about 2:30, and we now today know that anytime after 1 o'clock when we're tired, it's just don't be going down in places that you should. And this particular day, we again didn't have that mindset yet, so we're new. I was probably the best rider in terms of ability at that time, and everyone was just a little bit further behind me, maybe. And I'm not trying to boast it to my technique, but it'll make sense later in this terrifying scenario,
Yep.
um, where we head into Seven Fools. Seven Fools is a area that's amazing to ride in, but you better know where to go and how to get out of it because it's deep, deep, deep in the basin of this mountain. And we just happen to be following one of the guys in the group whom has been down in there. This particular guy has stayed the night on the mountain before. So he's a little bit more aware of how the mountain wants to eat you and can keep you there for a moment. But for some reason, again, we're new. We're not triggering the scenario. And we go down in the Seven Fools and we get to a point where we try to turn around and make our way out. One guy made it up and out. A second guy made it up and out. And then two of us couldn't. And then the two came back down to us, and instead of making a road like we would today, we already had two guys make it out. We could have easily made it out and made it home. There was a point where we all got frustrated. We just made a decision just to keep dropping.
Yeah.
So we dropped all the way into Seven Fools, and now it's
Wow.
3, 4 o'clock, slowly getting darker. And when darkness came in after, I bet 30 attempts, we had 30 different jogs of trying to get through this basin, and we learned later that there's several jog ups and then jog overs and then jog ups to have to get out of it. And we darkness set in, and once without helmet lights, your light on your snowmobile just doesn't do the work that you need to be safe in trees. And we were in
True.
dense maneuver, so guys were staying the night. We all gripped it. We all were ready. We all had survival blankets, shovels, knives, saws. We had jet boilers. We had two guys working on nothing but firewood, two guys working on melting water. So we were really prepared for anything that was going to happen that night with the weather. So we were fairly good, that in that route. But going to my spot device and going to something that wasn't able to communicate outwardly other than my little messages. All I had in my mind was, okay, my wife's going to go bananas wondering where I'm at and why I'm not coming home because she knows me and I'm literally like a cow going to get milked, if you will.
Yep.
I am all the time. And when I didn't come home, didn't call, she started wondering. But I had good messages that were inside there, and I had negative messages. Well, no one was hurt. There was no problem other than we were staying the night, so I didn't want to send out negative anything. So I was sending out on the hour the one that says, "Hey, everything's okay. I'm fine. We're having a great day." And I sent that out on the hour from 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, all night long, because there's no sleeping. You can try to sleep, but
Yeah.
it's just one of those things. You lay down, and once your body gets cold, you're going to be back at the fire.
Yeah.
And rotisserie chicken move, you're going to be doing that all night long,
Yep.
waiting for the sun to come up just to get out, try to work on getting out. But again, she got it. She understood my theory, and she knew something was wrong. And at that point, she was calling Albany Lodge. She was calling everyone she knew. So she got the knowledge out there that me and three other guys were staying the night. And that became a thing. Now, we had not hit SOS. We felt there was no reason for it. And then the next morning to take and move forward, we start to try to get out of this. And one of our jog ups, I end up taking a tree, breaking an A-arm, and everyone else, again, the riding ability, I had the ability to get a little bit farther than most and to take a step backwards to the night before. We had got in so many positions where there was times that I was riding 2 and 3 other people's snowmobiles to get them back to trackable places to ride out. Because again, so there was times that guys just didn't have anything left in the gas tank. They were beat, tired. And next thing I know, I'm trying to maneuver my sled plus a couple other guys' sled, plus walking through all that snow. I can't believe what I went through in terms of self alone. But going back to the next day, we turned on the factor that we're walking out of here. And that's when it was time to press SOS, because it was a full day walk to get out of Seven Fools to a road. And I just said, guys, we're hitting SOS and we're going to get people to come and get us. I looked at all three of the guys. I said, listen, I'm going to lead this. You might not be able to keep up with me, but follow my tracks and we're just going to get going. I'm getting us out of here. And I'm not kidding you, man. I walked, I paced, I walked, I paced. I let guys accordion to me and then get their break, and I'd pace again. And I tell you, there was a point where when search and rescue did get up to us 7-8 hours later, there was a point where when they handed me Gatorade, what I had done to my body, I couldn't even keep anything in my system because the body was eating itself.
Yeah.
You know, and it was one of those things where I was just like, I'd never taxed myself so much from that walk because we were probably knee-deep snow. So you're talking big steps up the mountain and then a roly-poliness across the top. And it was one of those days that I'll never forget it, you know, but I knew I was getting my boys out of there. You know, there was no faults for why we were there. You know, the leader, you could sit there and say to yourself, we followed that person took us there. No, we're men. We all can make decisions and help the other person make a better decision by good conversation. We weren't ready to know those conversations yet. We were naive. We were, again, farther into backcountry ability, but I think about those Midwesterners or people that come out in with the adrenaline hits and they just go anywhere they want. And then we find those people that get to stay the night. And there was guys who stayed 3 days out there a couple years ago type of stuff where, you know, these spot devices are great, but again, it comes back to ability, you know, and your ability to, you know, take on the ability to say no when stuff gets going wrong, because a lot can go wrong quick with bad decisions.
Gotcha. No, amazing story. So, I mean, if you were to think back to that day now, in hindsight, would you think you would still try to hike out the way you did, or would you hit the SOS button and let the search and rescue come to you, or like, what do you think was the better decision that day in hindsight? Would you do it again the same way?
Good question. I haven't really played that back in my.
Because I think, I mean, the reason I even asked the question is because what you just described to me in your own words was that you were way further exhausted beyond what you've ever been before, right? And the reality is you probably didn't realize how close you were to being at an extreme risk of not making it, right? Because if search and rescue hadn't found you and you'd exhausted yourself that far and now you needed to set up for a second night, would it have been smarter to like just stay hunkered down, keep your energy, stay focused on staying warm and all that, and let search and rescue come to you? Or would you think that the decision to hike out, and I don't know the answer, like only you will know the answer, but in hindsight, with your experience, like what would you do the same or different this time if that were to happen again?
Well, to know, there was one factor that because of the walking, when you press SOS, you give them a longitude and latitude of the pressing, where you're standing second. Once we moved, we threw off where we were.
I
We're
was just
no
thinking that same thing, but I wasn't going to say it out loud. But yeah, as soon as you told me you were moving, I'm like, ooh, I don't know if that's a good decision because they're going to come looking for you back where you were at, right? So
correct. Correct. So probably staying in the same place would be the right call based on the way strategy works on
yeah,
the excavation of us from there. But all in all, yeah, I'd probably stay. But knowing how far we are, where we were in there, um, in a certain way, we helped those guys out. You
yeah,
know, they they had to come the way they came, which was the way we were going out.
gotcha.
So somehow, some way, it worked out.
Yep,
We were really deep in there, and that would
yeah,
have been quite a mess for those guys coming all the way to us
yeah,
because we walked away from all of our machines.
yep,
And going back to a name I brought up earlier, the Felkers, it was Lynn Felker and all of his cronies that saved the day.
yep,
When we went to extract those sleds, we had a plan. Our plan would have never worked. And then I'm not kidding you, out of nowhere, Lynn heard about this, and he and his cronies gathered up from Loveland, and they drove all the way up there. And they literally, before we dropped into Seven Fools, all of a sudden it was like the rescue unit just showed up, and they all looked at us. They said, "Where's those sleds at?" We pointed down that mountain, which was, and they just dropped over that mountain like billy goats and went to work. And
nice.
they literally, because we marked where the sleds were, so we knew where they were. And when we went down, it had snowed 2 foot, so they
Wow,
were completely covered. But
yeah,
if it was those guys, they made a road for us to get us out of there, and made it make sense how you do the jogs and move and to get yourself out of Seven Fools. But I'll tell you, that was an awakening that day. That
yeah,
was the day. There was one thing with the girl we spoke of earlier, but this was the day that I realized I need to learn how to do this and become good at
yeah,
it. And that everything changed for me,
yeah. Well,
mentality wise, safety wise.
yeah, one angle with the spot devices or the inReaches is that I carry one, and it's getting more and more common that more people in the group are carrying them. But in a situation where like only one person is carrying them, I want to just call out that I think it's really important that everybody in the group understands who has the device and how to use it. Because, for example, if there was an accident where Patrick, you were incapacitated and you had the device on you, but nobody knew it, think about it, like they wouldn't know enough to go dig it in your backpack to go look for it, right, or whatever. And so you were going to mention that you had an issue come up like just in your ride yesterday, but I'm going to come back to that. Literally today I had kind of a moment that my wife and I, we were just the two of us riding alone, and it turned into like just this hysterical, funny, laughable moment. But in hindsight, not even in hindsight, but even in the moment, it was one of those moments where we took the opportunity to kind of talk through it and learn from it, right? And what happened was, no grooming yet, and there's a lot of 4x4 trails. There's not enough snow yet to really do anything real epic, but there's a lot of like 4x4 tracks up on the mountain right now. And as I was coming down the mountain, we were only a couple miles from the truck, just about, the end of the day, and my ski caught one of those ruts, and it was pretty hilarious. Like I literally, my ski caught the rut as I was crossing, kind of at an angle across the road. My sled decided to go the opposite way, and my body kept going that way. And so I did I call it a floppy, a crappie flop, right? Like just basically I fell over on my sled, and it was almost like a slow motion accident. And I fell over on my shoulder, and I laid there, and I'm just like, oh my dear, And so my wife behind me saw the whole thing. It was pretty hilarious. And her first reaction was she came up because of the way I fell. She goes like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just barely fell over. Like, what are you stressing about? Like, what's going on?" She was like, "I don't know, just the way you fell, it almost looked like you were having a medical emergency, right? Like as if I had heart attack or whatever." And we laughed it off at the moment, and then we started talking about it. It's like, well, geez, like had I, been in the situation where I was not able to do anything, would she know what to do? And the answer for her is yes. And we talked through it, and she goes like, yeah, the first thing I would do is I would reach in your jacket pocket, and I'd grab your inReach out of it, and I'd hit the SOS button, and then I'd do as much as I could to try to help. She's with me both. We've gone through CPR certifications, through our avalanche training classes. Rick Scherzel, who's one of the people watching tonight, he does a first aid kit called Altitude Sickness. He puts on a snowmobile kind of avalanche, not avalanche, but a first aid type safety course that we've attended. And so we both are trained. And so legitimately, if something had happened to me, she knew exactly what to do and to get help as quick as possible, right? And I think, that's something that in your stories as well as mine, it's like, it's something just to keep in mind is that when we do that morning meeting, people should understand who has these devices, who has the avalanche equipment, make sure everybody's beacons are working. You're doing all those things that you normally do anyway. So, but you said you had an issue that happened just yesterday that we'll do quick and then we'll wrap up the show tonight. So,
Yeah, it just kind of, again, there's 3 trucks up on the mountain in Green Rock parking lot. I didn't see anybody hardly on the mountain at all. So it's dead end. So not a lot of people are going up and running the road right now, other than Christmas tree people that are getting Christmas trees. Um, I'm off my snowmobile. I'm packed up. I said goodbye to the 1 truck next to me and the 4 guys that were loading up. And right when you're leaving Green Rock parking lot, there's a little road called Barber Lake Road that jets off, and it literally goes down a slope and then over a little bridge and then off into the switchbacks that takes you down the mountain. Um, and I'm driving and I look and I see a car, Forester, and I see 2 what I believe to be females, and I'm thinking to myself, none of that looks good. And again, I'm pulling my 29-foot or 20-foot trailer truck, and the road's only so big, and you just come up to it, you get a glance, and you keep going by. And my soul, my heart, my everything kept driving, and I just said, "You're gonna do this to me again, aren't you?" I turned around as fast as I could because I knew there was something not right with what I just saw.
yeah.
And literally, the winds were howling, like darkness set in, and it's snowing a little bit. And I walked down to where they were and realized, yeah, they're stuck terribly. And the snow is only a foot, but you're on a downward incline where they were gonna. They went pretty far and they backed all the way up to where it started going on the rise upward, and they were completely stuck. Well, for me and my truck, this was way too far for me to go down to get them. But again, all I'm talking about in this whole scenario was I was put into a situation and I had to turn around. And if I didn't, these 2 girls were sitting there not knowing what to do. We talked about it. They walked up to my trailer. I had the heat on still, melting down the snowmobile. I go, get in here. I go, we need to get a hold of, do you got something? And they had, what's it called? AAA.
Okay.
So they called AAA, and they ended up an hour later. One of the trucks that had a 50-yard cable was able to winch them out of that situation and up. And again, the point of it was like my first ride. I go out, I leave, and there's someone in distress. There's
Yeah.
someone that needed to hear what I needed to say. And there were several things because of them backing up. They had left the dog down in the car with the car on and the heat on, and the snow had plugged up the muffler.
Oh,
And I
wow.
go, "Do you have the car on? Is it running the dog on?" And I go, "Let's run down there." And yeah, and I've heard stories of people falling asleep in their cars because of the muffler being plugged.
Yep.
And again, scenarios that as it was going on, I'm going, again, God put me in this path to be here for you 2 girls that from Fort Collins, where I'm from, that just happened to think that this Forester could go down in the snow as it
Yeah.
was just too different. And again, they're fine. Everything worked out well. But again, that could have been a scenario where, let's say, I was the last truck. I didn't see them. Now they're alone up on that mountain in
Yep.
darkness, blizzardous situation, and who's to say they think about the stuff? They sit in the car with their dog. They
Yeah.
got the full gas, and they say, "Let's do and just stay and sleep this off tonight." And then that muffler's plugged up, and
Yep.
then we hear a horrible story the next day that 2 people pass away with their
Yeah.
dog in the carbon dioxide poisoning. So again, one of those scenarios where I was driving down the mountain afterward, going, "Wow."
Yeah, and it's good because I mean, we all have routines and we all have processes and things that we think, and if something doesn't look right, yeah, check in with people, check on what's going on, and it can be even in a city in an area where things just don't look right, and just checking
Yeah.
in on people makes a big difference. So
Yeah. Yep. So that was just the funny. I don't mean the word funny. It was just like I even told him about tonight's podcast,
Oh, funny.
saying, "You want to hear some irony?" You know, it just again in the right place at the right time. I feel like I'm the right person for that.
Yeah.
In the group with my fellas, with anybody I ride with. There's people that know me. I would consider myself the person in the group that's going to speak up and maybe speak up a little bit louder where someone tunes in and says, I don't like that dude. He's this, he's that, he's loud, he
Yeah.
talks too much. But at the same time, when I see what's happening that's going to end up
Yeah.
possibly going to get hurt because someone's just
Yeah.
riding through and they're not making good choices on their climbs and puts everybody into a terrible situation for their what to be should be a great day of riding. I'm that guy, and I oftentimes have situations where I lose what was an acquaintance at the time, not a
Yeah.
friend.
Yep.
But there's people that won't ride with me because I become that person. But I'm not trying to
And
be
that's okay.
off.
No, I've had same thing
And
where I've got buddies or neighbors that I've ridden with who like they know me, they get me, but then I've got, through extension their friends that they've ridden with in the past but are not safety minded, don't worry about it, don't stress about it, don't even care about it. And like when you try to do the safety meeting in the morning, we're all standing there together and these guys are all just like not even paying attention, rolling their eyes. And I'm the first one, I'll be like, I'll call them out. I'm like, you got a problem with this? Like, let's talk. Let's go through this, right? And yeah, the one guy got so pissed at me, he just like walked away. And I'm just like, I told my buddy or my neighbor, I said like, hey, here's the deal. If this guy wants to ride with us today, or if you guys want me to ride with your group today, this is not optional. We're having our discussion, we're having our meeting, we're having our beacon check, and we're going to make sure things are working right and we're on the same page. If not, I'm not comfortable riding with you guys. I'll just literally pack up and go home if we have to. And
yeah,
he eventually calmed down, he sorted things out, and we moved on and we got through the day. But yeah, that's the thing. This whole story, this whole night tonight, we individually can be a good kind of a peer pressure and influence on those around us around backcountry safety and education. And I think this is just a number of good stories right in a row here of talking about the same thing. So, great experience. So, Patrick, thank you for the sharing the stories and information that you did tonight. I think a lot of it was very educational, very helpful. A lot of great comments in here too. You can go in after the show and go in there and chat with these people too, and thank them for watching. But speaking of thank yous, like tell me anybody in your life that's gotten you to where you're at today, that has helped you with the process, that you want to give any shout outs or thank yous to, and then we'll wrap up the show.
oh sure. I mean, ultimately none of this is even possible without the faith in the Lord and knowing I live on this earth now without my mom and dad. um, they're no longer with us, so it's one of those things without them putting me on that street, walking down to that bus stop every day, being a part of those families in that neighborhood.
Yep.
um, was the Solettis, the Porters. I had just great people that loved me, and that was the start of my dreams. And the dreams just kept going and going and going to bring me here. So I think my wife, Megan, she's on this journey with me. Not only have I been able to make my technicality of backcountry riding come to almost to a point where it's like I can ride anywhere. I might not be doing the things Barant's doing and some of these other guys with these great moves, but I could ride all day if you put me with them. I'm going to go where they go, and that's neat. But again, that's my wife giving me the opportunity to go and do. The snowmobiling thing has helped my wife's dream come true because now we're blessed to have in Centennial, Wyoming, 2 cabins that we're sharing and renting out to snowmobilers that come in from all over the country,
Nice.
ski that enjoy the mountains. So she's dreamt of that, where my joy of snowmobiling has brought us to a very nice place that has a attraction.
Yep.
So somehow, some way, we've
Everything's
been
working out.
working together. So
Yeah.
I think my daughters, because they ride with me. My littlest daughter, Finley, she loves it. She can't wait to go ride this year. She's asking for a bigger snowmobile already. These are the things that make my heartstrings just, you know, love this even more. I love to go fast. I love the technicality, but there's nothing more than riding slow when you're with your family.
No,
So
exactly.
I thank them for that. And then anybody who rides with me, I thank all my team. Cody Smith, he was just on here. I think he was
Yep.
there for a minute. I ride with him. Matt Payne, who builds my snowmobiles, one of the best mechanics in the industry that's not even known. But this guy worked for Barant, who built my sled in the beginning, who I ride with to this day, who touches it every year. And that's, again, I didn't plan it. Things and the blessings of the Lord and who He's put me in front of and with, who've become my friends, who have become my writing partners. I just think, I think, all the people that allow me into their circles because I'm pretty bold and I just, again, you know, once I'm allowed in and people accept me for who I am, it seems like everything works out great. So
Yep.
between my mom and dad, between the family that I have right now, and all my writing crew, I thank them all. I thank anybody who puts up with me because I'm not the easy.
Well, we all just put up with you for an hour and 5 minutes long, and we loved every minute of it. So thank you for that, Patrick. Awesome, awesome. Well, everybody, thank you for watching the show. And if you haven't already, please take a moment to share the show out. Go in and check out the Avalanche Alliance Sweepstakes. Again, from the night tonight, December 1st, you have exactly 1 week from today to use this last chance promo code to get 50% more tickets. So let's crank that up. Let's push it over $100,000 raised this year so we can continue to make big impacts in the Avalanche motorized avalanche education industry here between avalanche centers and area scholarships. So great stuff. So I like to remind everybody at every show, Patrick, what live large means, right? Because it's the name of the show. It's what it's all about is live life to the fullest, which we're doing. We're talking about these adventures and these stories. Make the most of every day. So even when days go wrong, like some of the stories you had there, what did we do to make the most of it and make a difference to others? And again, your stories hit the nail on the head in all those situations. So again, live large. God bless everybody. Have a great night. Patrick, you hang tight. I'll talk to you in just a second. Thanks so much. Bye, everybody.